not for me. You can check yourself if something's happening. But in my world here, maybe we Europeans are excluded from those topics. No. World here, maybe we
Hmm.
Europeans are.
No, I think that that's what's powerful about these topics is of, where the metaverse falls in with you're in this country, you're in that country and rights and everything like that. This is
Yep.
a huge thing. Huge. Like really.
Okay. I
There's
think
something
we are live
changed.
here. I
There's
think
something
we. I've
Wednesday
got the
talk show.
feeling.
Remind me. Well, something changed. So, okay, I can see Cameron's head. Okay, so the camera, you need to pull the camera back if you can hear me. Oh, maybe hang on, wait, let me change the browser window. All I can see is the top of the screen. How about you, Chris?
Oh, I can see us and
Oh, really?
the
You
screen
can
in the
see the whole
background.
thing? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we have
So, can you hear audio? Cool. Okay. Good. Well, let's go ahead and start then. Okay. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and start. So, welcome to the Virtual Film Company. We meet here on Spatial every Wednesday, and we are still refugees from Alt Space VR, and so still trying to get our shit together here on Spatial, which hopefully we will be able to do soon and have these things start on time. But we're here every Wednesday right now at noon Eastern time. We also are doing other stuff like working on our comedy show, the Metaverse Mystery Manor. We're working on our documentary about the metaverse and a few other things. And so if you're interested in making film in the metaverse, let us know and we'd be happy to speak with you. So today is a continuation of the talk show that we had in Alt Space VR, and we invite you to join us both here in Spatial and on Twitch, and let us know if you have any questions. And one of the other things that we will do is get a schedule up that basically gets us back on track with what we're doing. But today we're going to be talking about the social implications of AI. And this was really brought upon by Sam Altman's testimony yesterday regarding AI. And I found it very interesting to go through the transcripts of the testimony. I found some of the senator's questions a little bit troubling. One of the things I found probably the most troubling was, I believe it's Howley is his name. I'm perhaps pronouncing that incorrectly, but he likened the invention of AI and questioned whether it was an atomic bomb type thing or an invention akin to the telephone. And, I just don't get this, the association of AI with a destructive device like an atomic bomb. And so, perhaps if someone could enlighten me to that. But, Altman's testimony, as far as I'm concerned, was pretty open. It was, we need standards in the industry and, there's a potential of it being used for harm, but, it's like everything else. So let's move forward and come up with a cure for cancer and other stuff. I mean, that's pretty much my summary. Chris?
Yeah, well, I mean, in that case, I have to say that there was a lot of interesting questions going on. The answers were, well, I mean, if you're testifying there in front of probably millions of people watching it and getting those questions that can more or less blow your company off is a little bit right, a special situation, let's say. And Altman was not alone. There was Miss Montgomery or Mrs. Montgomery from IBM as well, and a specialist, Professor Marcus, I think. Is that correct?
Right, right.
Who was also giving his ideas. And yeah, I think it's not that easy because how many senators were asking questions? I think 7 or 8 or 10 altogether. It was quite a lot. And I tried to keep track and wrote down some of the questions and answers just to have a little bit of an overview. And I liked several straightforward questions that, for example, went into the direction like when you're training your AI, how can you take into consideration that all the data that you're using has probably copyright issues? You're using pictures, you're using text, you're using whatever, and you will probably not ask every single copyright holder for, can I use that for my AI? I'm training something like a big brain, and now I'm putting all that stuff in there. May I use your images so that it can, whatever, use the structure in the end and make something new out of that? And there was this question coming that was really interesting. That question coming from the senator you see behind me. And she asks about the impact if it could be something like Napster, right? Because Napster was really problematic at its time for the music industry. And she was aiming for a little tool that you can find on OpenAI's website called, I think, Jukebox AI, where you can ask the AI to generate sounds in a certain type or manner, right? Of
Right,
of
right.
an art, right? So all these impacts on a business in the end, how would they be able to keep track here so that they don't, destroy this whole setup? Because when you can get to whatever tomorrow to any website, and instead of listening to the original music from the Beatles or I don't know, uh, and still active musician, the AI might be able to just generate you the same type of music, uh, right? Just by
Well,
itself, and you have never to buy another album from the original composer, musician, whatever. So does that make sense?
well, it only makes sense if you believe that a musician is a fixed job, that, forever and ever and ever, there's going to be this person that's going to be paid money to create music. And, that's obviously not the case. Computers can,
Yeah,
it's not
but
to say that people can't do it in their spare time or as a hobby or whatever, but I use Moobert, for example, which has gotten better and better and better at creating music. And the music industry itself, I mean, I started using Sony Acid, probably 15 years ago. I mean, a long time ago. And basically what that is that you buy collections of instrumental sounds, drum beats and harps and guitars and whatever, which, obviously someone put together. They created these, and, you
yeah,
combine them, and, nobody complained at that point. And, ironically enough, yesterday I was in a meeting with an artist who, was talking about how they create art. And this person was saying, one of the things that they do is they go through Google Photos and whatever and look for a look that they're looking for, and they copy that look. And, I'm thinking, yeah, and these people people will complain about, AI. And, not to negate your point, and I think it's important that the materials that AI is being trained on are original, or, that there's no scraping of the web or stealing illegal stuff. But the having the ability to create these large language models out of anything. So, we could take, and again, I mean, I think it goes back to yesterday's point, is there needs to be some regulation here where, I mean, people need to be compensated if their works have been used in the creation of these images or, written works. Midjourney, for example, came up with a really good idea many, many months ago, which Stable Diffusion has tried to copy in the last couple of months, I think last month or so, which is having users rate the images and add to the training. And so ultimately, one creates a unique model because it's based on, user input and user training. And so, it deviates very much from what's out there in terms of being scraped. But yeah, I mean, it's a concern.
It is for sure. I mean, it's a concern. The big question here probably is, so in a certain amount, in a certain way, it's quite an old question, isn't it? When is something that somebody creates is unique? When you're a musician, for example, and in the end you're just sampling whatever kind of sounds from ABBA or the Beatles or I don't know who, right? You're just copying the style. And I mean, let's face it, there are so many musicians that are doing that, right? They get inspired by others.
Right.
Say it like that. So now, and everyone is just using something like a method, or music is quite mathematic. Like Johann Sebastian Bach, for example, he was using um, his music like a mathematician, right? Somehow it was really, really constructed. And so anyone can learn it in the end, right? Maybe not everyone will be as gifted as Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart in the end, or, right? But still, a lot of people will have the chance to recreate it somehow. I'm using GarageBand on my
Okay.
iPad, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
tons of samples there, and you can make your own music stuff in there. So it's the big question. Now we have in the future probably we have an AI model, and that will be able to create 500 music pieces in 10 minutes or what the heck, right? And you just choose from what you like most, and use that for your commercial, for your documentary or whatever. And yeah, probably a lot of people will not be able to earn a living anymore. Now we can say, well, we had already a lot of possibilities to buy music online on libraries and use those pieces, right? Sure.
Right.
It's just another, let's say, step
And that's what I do.
forward.
That's what I've been.
Yeah.
I've supported some of those platforms as far as I think somewhere along the way there's some artists getting paid for people to license
Right.
their content to put in their projects. And I think that there still is a market for that and there's a value in being able to curate that content, because there's so much stuff out there. What's not good, what is good, what fits the moods. I think going back to the atomic bomb exploding comment, I see the value in that statement, because as I sit back and process, like even what you guys are talking about, what has transpired over the last couple of years, that this is powerful. These are powerful tools that are coming into existence And I feel like they're changing the whole landscape of where we're going, what we're doing, and what is possible. And I see this as these are tools that can empower people, and we do need to know where that balance is, where the copyright comes in. Because bottom line is we need to find a way for there to create a balance to where artists can get paid. They can be, whether they're working with AI or not, but they're creating and curating content. I think that there's huge markets for this stuff. Of where we're going. It's a matter of just building the structure right. And artists want to create. So it's like, let's give them a platform that makes sense to where, like, not only do they want to create their own stuff, I believe that they wouldn't mind creating for other people, but they need to be able to make a living wage from it. I feel like, when John is talking about, as this hobby, I feel like that's one of the main problems in the world is, if you're an artist, it's done as a hobby in a time, like, in addition to your regular job that you have to have. And I think that we need to change that model, because somebody should be able to be an artist for X amount of hours and then do other things, or be able to maybe have only a part-time job that they can then pay all of their bills, but then they can still be a part of a system that's creating. So we need to figure out where the balances are within all of these things in order to move forward properly. That's what I think.
Yeah, I guess so. There must be somehow a way. I guess in the end, it's the people that will decide, because it's a market, right? And when people think like you do and say, no, I don't want to have something that is just generated out of a computer. I want a person to be paid for the work that the person did, and I'm going to buy, even if I'm not going to a composer and give him money to say do something for me, but I still can go into an online shop and purchase whatever I need, and I know that a person will be paid. But in the end, think about that. If I'm now going on one of those shops and I'm setting up 10,000 music pieces, and I call those with fancy names, like this one was made by Chris whatever from Norway, and this one was done by John LeBond from Britain or whatever. Just give them fancy names, and people think like, oh, those are composers. And in the end, everything just came out of my computer because I used whatever kind of AI. Well,
so are you the computer? Because did you ask yourself those fancy names and then they magically appeared in your brain right there, and you just fired them away?
No, I could also ask ChatGPT to do that. Like, give me 100 names of fancy, composers, and I just drop them on those music pieces that the other AI generated, and then I'm uploading them to whatever kind of music space online and sell that stuff. Would that be a crime?
I actually did that. I did that.
What? Hello?
Well, I didn't sell it, but I had Chat GPT, write a song, and then I asked it to score a song, and it basically came up with these, very basic scores. And then I found the site, and obviously I don't remember the name of it, which enabled you to download the software package. I think I posted something to our website, or definitely the Facebook page about this, where there are certain singers out there right now that are allowing their voices to be cloned. And so, with this software package, what you can do is you can, generate your songs from
Right.
ChatGPT, pull them in here, use this woman's voice or other voices, and all of a sudden now, it goes back to the question here of, one of the things that Hawley tried to illustrate here was, I think he started off his introduction and by the way, for those of you that are watching, I'm sorry that our topic says video games. Today we're talking about AI. We have just moved to spatial, and so we're trying to get things right, but we're here every Wednesday at noon Eastern time, and we're the Virtual Film Company. So today we're talking about AI and specifically the hearings that were held yesterday. But so as I was saying, one of the things that they did for effect was that, he came on and, it wasn't him, it was a clone or, whatever one wants to call it, a deep fake. And, he tried to use that as a way to illustrate the horrors of it all, I guess. But, none of this is really that new. I mean, the thing that is new is that consumers now have access to this technology when they didn't before. And, man, I mean, one of the, I mean,
I mean, circling back around with this, John, I think like a point that we've brought up in other things is this is where the new blockchain, it's all about re-identifying, like with this singer's voice, putting it out there as far as licensing goes. If we have a fractional system that will pay artists and it's smart and intelligent, and let's say artists can put their artwork out there and they want people to use it and license it, and they get a certain percentage, depending on how much they're giving out. If this is a complete song that maybe you're a dancer, you just want to dance to, but maybe you got to give up 50% of the royalty to the artist that made it and created it, and that would get divided out. I mean, I think with the blockchain will come a lot of resolution, because if artists are truly getting paid for creating their art, I think that they will really get behind this thing. And we've got an excited person running around. The sensei is so excited about what I'm talking about. So thank you for your enthusiasm. That is appreciated.
Well, as I've said, Eric, I mean, if we're talking about artists' rights, I mean, the word artist is a big category. But, for example, on Google, right, I mean, I'm looking at it right now. So, I mean, I have 103 million views of photographs that I've posted to Google for free, right? I mean, I haven't been paid a cent for any one of those 103, 601,896 images.
Well, that's where the system, I got to say, is broken. And you know what, John? I would love to have somebody from Google talk to you about this, because this is a big problem. This company worth so much money, and you've done so much. Like, this is where things are not in alignment. And I would love for them to speak on this, because how can they justify with what they're doing and what you have done equates to no money? Like, to me, that doesn't make any sense.
But it goes to this whole thing we're talking about, and what Chris brought up in terms of copyright here, and Cameron is agreeing that it's wrong, and it's like, the question is though, who do you compensate? And Mid-Journey at their office hours meetings occasionally has brought this up, is how do you compensate an artist for use of either their style or whatever. I mean, and to me, it doesn't seem that difficult, given, as I think Chris mentioned, the blockchain, or you mentioned the blockchain and the technologies that we have, that, even a penny or a half a penny or a tenth of a penny or whatever is better than nothing. And I mean, that's how it's always worked in the photographic business. And, that's an interesting business when we talk about loss of jobs, because that, has evolved, and I've been personally associated with it and felt the dread. I mean, I remember, the going from a fully manual camera to a fully automatic camera, and how freaky that was. I mean, it was like, no, this will never take off. It's like, why would anyone want an automatic camera? And one has to
Mhm.
learn to adapt. But, photography has had that model where there have been stock houses, and I'm glad to say that some of the image stock houses are now taking AI images, so one can earn residuals on reuse.
Definitely, yeah.
It's
Right. I mean, I guess we could go on talking about copyright in this case for a long time. And I think what is important to be from the hearing was that Senator Blackburn, I think was her name, she asked about that, and Senator Altman answered when she directly asked about if they were going to work together with something like a copyright office. And he said, yeah, well, we have to find a way in this case. So OpenAI is aware of that. And he also said that there must be something like an implementation on the web where you can set your privacy on different platforms. It might be Facebook or whatever, Instagram, I don't know, where you can set a flag and say, my content here should not be used by any AI training or whatever, right?
sure, like a no
Something
follow
like a
bot
private,
tag, right? Yeah,
whatever,
like
yeah, something
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So I think we're quite still at that early stage of AI, but people are aware of that. So I'm quite interested to see what's going on there. But there were many more really interesting questions. So I liked one question from Senator Graham
hmm
about Section 230. Do you know what that is?
Yes. The Telecommunications Decency Act and the removing. I mean, basically, what they want to do is make telecommunication companies responsible for the content that users post. And this came up I mean, there's a whole history to this if you want to go into it, but in the United States here, we didn't have any real telecommunications regulation until the Telecommunications Act of 1996. And one of the contentious issues in that particular act was decency or pornography, I guess, if you want to bring it out, because things were happening where somebody could run a server in a particular state that had laws that basically said that if you deal in pornography you can go to jail for life. And anyway, so they finally reached this compromise, and the right-wing part of our population seems to really hate the fact that they cannot make a publisher responsible for the content that is posted to their platform. And, I think, maybe one could argue that, AI could do and Midjourney is doing this where they've used AI as a means of, what should I say? The AI is now the century, and it's looking for words in context that could be used to create a evil post, which Midjourney wants to avoid at all costs, and it seems to be working pretty well. But like everything that is related to a computer, to AI, to whatever, and I notice this all the time with GPT chat, is that I draft a document, and that's what it is. It's a draft because it needs to be adjusted. It needs to be changed. If I just sent it off as it came out, that would be, but that brings me up to another issue. And, this morning, actually, I was reading in the news about this, where a professor at a particular college apparently gave students zeros on their paper, because what he did was he fed their papers back into GPT and asked GPT if it had generated these papers. And I mean, which is a ridiculous thing to do, because anyway, there's just so much misunderstanding about what AI is, and the fact that in many industries like the security industry, I mean, we've used AI, for example, for target acquisition when it comes to, video surveillance systems for, many, 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 many years. There's,
Yeah. I mean,
it's,
I guess there's still quite probably a discussion about what is AI and what is, for example, machine learning, right? Because for sure we used machine learning algorithms for a long time to do things like tracking positions of an object in a picture or whatever. But in the
right.
end,
Yep.
what I understood from this question from Senator Graham was that Section 230. He asked a precise question in the direct. Someone is doing something with AI and ruins the life of a person. So that could be just
But
whatever.
Chris, that goes to, I mean, my reaction to that whole line of thinking is, I mean, there were other questions, I can't remember exactly what they were, that were related to what you just said, is, what happens if AI does this, and what happens if AI does that? And, when I'm reading this, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, you don't need AI to be doing this. You have people out there already that are ruining people's lives by doxing
Right,
them,
but
or
wait, John.
know.
You're absolutely right in this case, but now AI, for example, is for sure capable. I mean, you could program an AI system like you probably heard or already tried this automatic AI system, right? That is working on itself. You just give it a task and it's
Right.
doing stuff, right? Auto GPT or how they call it in the end. So you could also do, as a programmer, program an AI that the whole day, night and day probably, is sitting there and just writing false accusations about a bunch of people, that you listed. Like do that with people from the company X or whatever, right? Because you want to ruin the company, and then you're going after their 500 employees and whatever, and trying to ruin their lives. So in that case, sure, you could say, well, this is one person who programmed it, but the AI is executing it in the end. Stuff like that. So
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean, that's fair enough, but that's to me, one of the big shortcomings here, and I've actually written a couple of papers on this, is if you look back at the beginning of the internet, right? So the early 90s, right?
right.
There have been security problems that we are still dealing with today, many, many years later, that haven't been resolved. Like, the number one problem when you look at all security studies is people and social engineering and the ability to trick people. And, yes, using technologies like AI will give you a better script. And, those letters that have been coming from Nigeria for the last, 60 years or whatever it is, they first started off as, mailed envelopes with stamps, and then they started pouring in as emails, are going to get better. And
Yeah.
people are going to be duped by, these virtual girlfriends that are going to sound like sexy chicks and are going to have these hot bodies, and maybe men as well, and they'll send thousands of dollars. I mean, it's going to happen. But,
Wait a second.
those are the stupid people. I mean, there's always going to be this group of stupid people who just, man, it's like...
One second. There are virtual girlfriends. Why didn't you guys tell me about that?
No, there's a woman that just started a virtual girlfriend, and she's raking in, by all accounts. I mean, I haven't verified this, of course, but many thousands of dollars already from this virtual girlfriend that people can call into and have a video chat with. So, and that's
Yeah.
just the beginning. I mean, that's just the beginning. We've and sure, we can regulate this. It needs to be regulated. People need to be paid for it, but we also need to be cognizant of the fact that we haven't fixed a lot of things that are broken when it came to, just spreading disinformation, just spreading propaganda by itself. We haven't even dealt with that. So why are we freaking out about something that, if we don't get to the root cause of, or the root problem, which is people, and I think, it goes back to education that,
Yeah, one second, John. The root problem might be people in the beginning, but again, I guess that artificial intelligence can develop further and further. And maybe one time, one of those artificial intelligence that was started somewhere in a lab, let's say, is escaping somehow into a computer system and then lives there for a long time
Yeah.
and for, let's say, doing harm, attacking people, being mean to persons, what the heck. And then because some bad person programmed it 40 years ago, what the heck, right? Like,
yeah, Chris, it could happen. It could happen. But, right now we have a war in the Ukraine. We have, a crazy person in North Korea. We have, all kinds of weird climate shit going on around the world. And,
right.
We can be distracted by AI and all of this when we should actually be focusing on, what's wrong with the world right now and fixing it, without like, oh no, let's worry about something that could happen down the road where, AI is going to take over and it's going to be this dystopian world. And
everybody, yeah, well, totally. But the problem is everyone's entitled to their opinion, and everyone's voicing their opinion, and some of it's right, some of it's wrong, and I think people should be able to, we've put too many things under the microscope, and this point is not going away, because there's going to be, people are going to win battles on one side, they're going to win battles on the other side. But I do really feel like that's why in these beginning stages is we need to figure out how artists, the people who've really created content as it's all about to be unfolding, are going to get compensated. So pulling them all together, somebody like John getting over 100 million views and not getting a penny, like, that's a problem. That's a big, big problem that needs to be resolved moving forward. We got to figure out how people can get compensated for their art, 100%. Whether they're creating, educating, whatever they're doing, that's what I see the main resolution, because if people are getting paid, it shuts other people up. Because if they got money in their bank, they're like, and then it's going to get real artists who are very talented to want to come on board and license their artwork because they know they're going to get paid for it. That's what I think it comes down to. These are the big points.
That's back to the copyright thing. But again, I think there are some more also quite relevant topics that were discussed yesterday. Again, the Section 230, as far as I understood, Sam Altman said that is not the right framework to get after it. Everyone was more or less agreeing, or everyone agreed on that there must be a regulation in form of probably an agency that has to issue licenses to companies, and those companies will be allowed to create AI systems. A monitoring agency, that's what they said in the end. Um, I don't know if, doesn't that mean in the end that you will just really have 5 to 10 or 20 big companies that will be able to get a license and to be able to put the money behind a big language model or whatever? I mean, okay, where would be the big difference? Think about the situation that we have today. Think about the large language model called Llama, and that was created by Facebook or Meta, and then it was leaked. It was meant to be open source, and someone said, "Oh, it's open source data, so anyone can use it." And then someone leaked it and said, "Oh, it's over there. It's lying on this space. It shouldn't be disclosed to others, probably." And then a lot of people downloaded it and created their own large language model on the base of the Llama model because they just trained a new one. And then we had those models that you can download today and try them on your PC at home. For example, the Vicuña model and GPT for all and others, right? So those experiments, let's say, they probably would never got a license, I guess, because those are not really pirated models, but somehow models that were just created on top of something else. So wouldn't that be impossible in the future in the end? Does it make sense to try to cut the development off on this side? I'm not sure.
But then what happens, Chris? Do you get arrested if you're caught in possession of,
For example, when
what
you
is? I
when you
mean,
start your Vicuña model,
it's
yeah. Right.
yeah.
That's
I
the
mean,
big question.
one of the things this reminds me of is, although it's not related, is the continuing fight against encryption by governments, where the U.S. government has tried to, for example, I mean, France has successfully done this in many ways, but the U.S. government has continually tried to ban the personal use of encryption, basically arguing that only criminals would use it. And it's almost like the implications are the same with AI, where we've got to do something because criminals are using it. And I think there's some major privacy issues that need to be overcome, because in my opinion, for something like ChatGPT to be useful, it needs to remember state, and it needs to remember my past conversations with them and the context of those conversations. And so I need to be able to say to it, "Hey, you remember, that idea that we had the other day? What was it?" And it needs to come back to me and be able to, and that's where I think it gets dangerous, because it is going to be storing all of this information. And, I mean, I'm obviously, and I was going to say, I'm obviously not going to give it my bank account information, but maybe I end up doing that because it becomes convenient to, instead of,
Right.
yeah. So who knows? I mean, and those are definitely concerns, but it goes back to our, the statement I made earlier about cybersecurity, where we've had issues since the beginning. I mean, another one, let's forget about people for a moment here and say, people are perfect. Another one is the ability or the inability to apply patches and upgrades, where, that's just continued to be exploited because people are too lazy to make sure that they've, sure, there are 0-day attacks, and, you're going to be one of the unfortunate few that suffer before applying the update. But when, there's been an update out there for a year or two and you get attacked because you haven't installed it, there's no sympathy from me for that kind of thing. And it just continues on. Or people that use, let's use a password that has like 5 simple words or characters in it, rather words, that would be better. But Man, I mean, password crackers have been around since day one, dictionary attacks and
Yeah, well, I mean,
this,
sure, that there is always a risk also in the digital world. I mean, that was discussed yesterday as well. They talked a lot about the failures that social media did. For example, that they never really monitored well enough. For example, not in the that was one question was about that the
yeah.
moderation of the English environment was quite okay, but in other languages in the world, social media like probably Facebook or what they aim for in this case, did not a good job. Twitter, maybe, I don't know. So they were asking for if there will be a better setup in the future for AI that will include a better moderation of different languages. And Sam Altman said, like, yeah, they already included, for example, Icelandic, the language from
Mm.
Iceland, right, into ChatGPT or into their model, whatever, just to be sure that it could be understood and so on and so on, and not just the big languages would be in there. Um, yeah, well, if that helps to get to a better cultural inclusivity, as they said that, I don't. Well, we will probably see if that's really possible, because when you go down that road, I would ask how good is their Bavarian, right? Because they can implement German, but do they
Right.
also have the specific things from Bavaria and cultural differences there, and so that nobody gets insulted or what the heck? I don't know. Maybe in 100 years that will all be inside of an AI, because it will get in there time by time. But well,
That's
I,
you bring up an interesting point about cultural differences, because ultimately what one would expect is that it would develop its own personality based on what it knows about all cultures. And I think, that's one of the, definite things that came out of this hearing was that people were scared of, biases like racial biases that, have crept into AI,
right.
because some of this training material that it's used dates back to, who knows? I mean,
Yeah, 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 and you don't know exactly where it's coming from. I mean, we're talking about big data. The stuff is getting sucked down somewhere from servers in probably petabytes wise, I guess. So it's tons of information that they're just working on, and who knows exactly what they are chewing there on, right? So in that case, yeah, um, I'm curious how they want to solve those issues. But well, I mean, I'm I'm really interested to see what the Senate or what the U.S. government in the end is going to do in this case, um, to make a regulation, and that was also one of the points, that will not kill the development of AI, but will try to keep it into a certain boundary, that it's not doing harm in the end.
well,
Just
on that, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
we are running into the last 10 minutes, and I just wanted to ask, we have some visitors here, if they want to ask a
Oh,
question
okay.
or give a statement in that case as well. We have also a question from YouTube and Facebook, sorry, from Twitch in this case, from a
Oh,
user
cool.
called Myelin Sheath XD.
Okay.
Yeah, that
What is
must be a
Mylan
strange
wondering?
person. Yeah. So this person is asking, what if someone claims an art copyright that was created by himself using AI?
Well, I mean, the problem with that, first of all, is that one can't, here in the US anyway, you can't copyright something that was created by AI. And so one couldn't
Mhm.
make that claim to begin with. It's as simple as that right now. I mean,
Okay. I mean, you could just say, well, it was not. But let's make a picture in Stable Diffusion and just claim I painted it myself.
well, so I mean that brings up a whole different can of worms here, because people like myself that have done over 100,000. I mean, I think I'm going on to 117,000 images now on Midjourney, will argue that you really need to work on prompts to get images out that are there's a difference between an image that I think is clip art or stock images. I mean, for example, I was doing a couple of images of Pittsburgh and I got offices and glass and stuff like that, but I think using AI to create art is no different to me using a camera. I mean, I've been in the position where I've been told that as a photographer, what I'm creating isn't art. So, you know, so it's a very difficult subject, because it goes back to what is art. And
Sure.
ultimately, to me, the thing that matters is that it looks like art and people think it's art, and that, they don't ask, was that made in Photoshop, or, was that made in, whatever Corel Draw or whatever, I mean, most art these days, I mean, there's people that certainly do great work out there with real, canvas and oils and, acrylics and whatever. But, a lot of it is done on a computer, and those
Yeah.
people haven't taken flack. I mean, I can buy, and this is where, I mean, it goes back to this copyright discussion, where if you look at Adobe's effort, Firefly, and we could, although we're running out of time here, as I was going to say, we could do a quick demo of that, but,
Not
they
really.
have the approach that all the images that they've used to train their model belong to them, belong to the Adobe stock library. So, anything that you create, basically being a member of, whatever you have the
Well,
rights to. And
Adobe is smart though, because part of the thing when you sign up, you can also allow them to share some of your information. So other artists have granted them access. So I'm sure their images are going into that queue that they're using to advance their stuff.
yep. Hey, Exploring Zebra, how you doing? She left. Okay. Yeah, but they also now on Midjourney, the Midjourney on Firefly, they will put the Firefly logo on every image that you generated, with a little statement that this was created by Firefly. And Midjourney has actually been asking about that as well. But again, it goes back to this question of, even if I'm a student and I write a really good paper, that the foundation of that paper was ChatGPT, but I added stuff to it and I checked all the references, and, I made sure that the formatting was correct and yada, yada, yada. I ran it through a plagiarism engine and everything was fine. Why should I not get an A+ for that because I used ChatGPT? I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, it doesn't, these things need to be looked upon as motivational products when it comes to education, that, they provide people with tools to, be more creative, or get out of creative slumps or whatever. I mean, it's just, man, there's just so
Well,
much
another
potential.
topic for another day is there's a lot of things going on across the board. Ed Sheridan was up on trial for a song they used. I believe it was a Marvin Gaye song, to where it just it was a chord that he had to defend that they could not copyright this chord. So people, they're trying to get so minuscule of, hey, I own the rights to this, and he provided examples in lots of other songs where that same kind of chord was used. It was used before that song was made. So it's like, where does that fine line come in between what is right, what is not right? And I think we're going to be going against this from till the end of time, man. And with the Writers Guild strike, supposedly this is a huge deal as well, because now the studios supposedly want to use AI to come up with their ideas, and then they'll just hire on a writer to do the rewriting of the scripts at the end. And, is that okay or not okay? That's another huge point.
Why wouldn't it be okay? I mean, poor writers are going to lose their jobs, but,
I had a conversation with the writer. I had a conversation with the writer, and I told him you should learn how to use this so you could be the writer that's hired to help rewrite the stuff. It's about learning how to posture and leverage this stuff to where you can be more successful and you can work more efficiently.
Yep. Well, maybe we can talk about that more next week. So, again, this is the Virtual Film Company. We're here on Spatial. You're welcome to join us in VR or on a phone or on a browser. Check our Facebook page for the link. We're also on Twitch and YouTube, and be sure to show us lots of love. And join us every Wednesday at noon Eastern Time, either by tuning into our show on Twitch or YouTube Live, or joining us here in person. We'd love to get to know you and have you check out our new studio here on Spatial. So this is John, Chris, and someone called Intention coming to you live from Spatial. So,
yes. I'm a mystery, so just another form of a mystery and intention. And something tells me we're not going to run out of any information to talk about anytime soon with these topics that we're on.
Right, and thank you to Mylan, our camera person, for making these feeds possible. It's looking really good today, Mylan, and if only I didn't lean over that much. But anyway, so, oh well. So tune in next week. Thanks again, folks. Thanks for your questions.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for... This is a great conversation about a very, very interesting, relevant topic. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I guess that's it for the day.